My granddaughter Emma threw my walking stick into the busy street and laughed. "If you can get it back without getting hit by a car, I'll buy you lunch," she said, her eyes sparkling with cruel amusement. I stood there on the sidewalk, my 71-year-old legs shaking, watching cars speed past the wooden cane that had helped me walk for the past 2 years since my hip surgery. The worst part wasn't the danger or the humiliation. It was the laughter coming from behind me. My son Michael and his wife Linda were actually enjoying this. "Mom, she's just having fun with you," Michael called out, barely hiding his grin. "Don't take everything so seriously." Before we continue, comment where you're watching from and subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see how far our stories are reaching. A young man in a delivery uniform stopped his truck and jogged into the street during a brief gap in traffic. He retrieved my cane and brought it to me, his face full of concern. "Ma'am, are you all right? Are these people with you?" I couldn't answer him. The shame was too deep, too raw. I just took my cane and mumbled a thank you. "See? You made it through alive." Emma slapped my back hard enough to make me stumble forward. "Now you've earned your lunch, Grandma." This horrible moment happened on what should have been a happy day. After 3 years of my son and his family asking me to sell my house and move in with them, I had finally agreed. Ever since my husband Robert died, they kept telling me I shouldn't live alone in that big house. They said they worried about me, that they wanted me close to family. The whole family had gathered to celebrate my decision. My brother-in-law James was there with his wife, my nephew Mark and his family, even some of Michael and Linda's friends. Everyone was supposed to be happy that I was making this smart choice. But when Emma threw my cane into traffic, not one person said anything. Not one voice spoke up for me. They all just watched. Back at the house, while everyone chatted over coffee and cake, I sat quietly in the corner. The truth was hitting me like cold water. These people didn't love me. They saw me as something useful, something they could benefit from. I wasn't moving in with a loving family. I was giving up my freedom to people who didn't respect me. "You're very quiet, Mom," Michael said, sitting down next to me. His voice sounded caring, but his eyes looked calculating. "Having second thoughts?" "Just tired," I lied, forcing myself to smile. "Well, don't worry about anything. We'll handle everything for you." He patted my hand in a way that felt more possessive than comforting. "Linda already picked out furniture for your room. Smaller pieces, of course. We'll need to get rid of most of your old stuff from the house." My old stuff included furniture Robert and I had collected over 45 years of marriage, his books, family photos, everything that made our house a home. "And we've been thinking," Michael continued, lowering his voice, "it might be easier if we add Linda's name to your bank accounts. Just for convenience, you understand. So we can help you manage your money better." This wasn't the first time they'd mentioned my finances. Since Robert died, there had been many suggestions about my money. Investments Michael thought I should make in his business. Expenses he believed I should cover Emma's private school fees. Their family trips, house improvements. More and more pressure to let them handle my financial affairs. As people started leaving, my nephew Mark stayed behind. Mark was my sister-in-law's son, and we'd never been particularly close, but he'd always been a decent young man. "Aunt Sarah," he said quietly, taking my hands, "are you really sure about this move? You know, if you ever need anything, you can call me." There was something in his eyes, concern, maybe even a warning. But before I could respond, Linda appeared beside us. "Mark, so sweet of you to come," she said, putting her arm around my shoulders in a way that felt more like a claim than affection. "We're going to take such wonderful care of Sarah. She doesn't need to worry about anything anymore." Mark's smile became tight. "I'm sure you will," he said, but his eyes stayed on mine. "Remember what I said, Aunt Sarah. Anytime." After he left, Linda's grip on my shoulder became painful. "That boy has always been jealous of your relationship with Michael," she said. I wouldn't listen too closely to whatever he was whispering about. That night, lying in the guest room that would soon become my permanent home, I stared at the ceiling and cried quietly. The room was half the size of my bedroom at home, with no space for Robert's reading chair or my sewing table. The walls felt like they were closing in on me. I could hear Michael and Linda talking in low voices downstairs, and something about their tone made me feel like a child listening to adults discuss her fate. I thought about Robert and what he would say if he could see me now. Robert, who had always been so careful with our money, who had left everything perfectly organized for me. "Don't let anyone push you around, Sarah," he used to say. Not even our own children. But I had let them push me around. After Robert died, the grief had been so overwhelming that I'd been grateful when Michael offered to help with paperwork and bills. Slowly, he'd taken over more and more. I'd let it happen because I was too sad and confused to handle things myself. Now here I was, about to give up the last piece of my independence, my home. I thought about Emma throwing my cane into traffic, about the laughter, about the stranger's kindness. I thought about Mark's worried eyes and his whispered offer of help. Something was shifting inside me. A quiet voice, maybe my own, maybe Robert's, was whispering that this wasn't right. This whole situation felt wrong, and I was finally starting to understand why. I couldn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat by the window watching the moon, thinking about everything that had brought me to this moment. By morning, I hadn't made any big decisions, but something had changed. For the first time since Robert died, I felt something other than grief and confusion. I felt angry. The anger wasn't explosive or dramatic. It was quiet and steady, like a candle flame that refuses to be blown out. As I watched the sunrise through the window of what was supposed to become my permanent prison, I realized I wasn't ready to give up my life just yet. What I didn't know then was how deep the betrayal went, or how much they had already taken from me. I didn't know that in the next few days, I would discover things that would make Emma's cruelty with the cane seem like a small preview of a much larger horror. All I knew as I got dressed that morning was that something fundamental had shifted inside me. The woman who had been too grief-stricken and confused to stand up for herself was starting to wake up. And she was not happy with what she was seeing. The next morning, I returned to my own house, the home where Robert and I had lived for 42 years together. I had 2 weeks before the sale would be final. 2 weeks of freedom before I moved in with Michael's family permanently. As I turned the key in the lock, the familiar smell of lemon furniture polish and old books surrounded me like a warm hug. Walking through the room slowly, I touched everything: the dining table Robert had refinished by hand, the quilt my mother made for our wedding, the photographs that told the story of our life together. It all felt more precious now that I was about to lose it forever. In Robert's study, everything was exactly as he'd left it when he had his heart attack 3 years ago. His reading glasses still sat on top of an open book. His favorite pen lay next to his leather notebook. I hadn't been able to change anything after he died. Michael had called it unhealthy, said I was living in the past instead of moving forward. I sat in Robert's chair and opened the bottom drawer where he always kept our important papers. The folder with our financial documents was gone. I frowned, trying to remember when I'd last seen it. Had Michael taken it when he offered to help me sort through Robert's paperwork, right after the funeral? I'd been so lost in grief that I hadn't questioned him taking things. My worry grew as I searched through other drawers. More gaps where important documents should have been. Our will, the house deed, insurance papers, all missing. How had I not noticed this before? Had grief really made me so blind to what was happening around me? With shaking hands, I picked up the phone and called our bank. After going through the security questions, I asked about the balance in our main checking account. "Mrs. Martinez, your checking account currently has $3,847, the bank representative told me. That couldn't be right. There should have been over $40,000 in that account, money from Robert's life insurance that I'd been saving for house repairs and property taxes. And the savings account? My voice was barely a whisper. That shows a balance of $9,236. The room started spinning. Our savings account had held over $85,000 3 years ago. Can you tell me about recent withdrawals from these accounts? There was a pause. Mrs. Martinez, it shows regular transfers to another account over the past 3 years. Most of them between $1,500 and $4,000 each month. What account are they going to? I didn't authorize any transfers. Another pause. The transfers are going to a joint account belonging to Michael and Linda Martinez. According to our records, these transfers were made using your online banking login. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Michael had set up online banking for me after Robert died, saying it would make things easier. He created the passwords and shown me how to use it, though I rarely checked it myself. I trusted him completely. "Ma'am, is there anything else I can help you with?" the bank representative asked. I thanked her and hung up, my hands ice cold. Michael had been stealing from me for 3 years. Over $110,000 of my money was gone. No wonder he'd been so eager for me to sell the house and move in with them. The house was probably the last valuable thing I owned. As the shock began to wear off, memories started surfacing like debris after a flood. Michael helping me with insurance paperwork after Robert's death. Linda suggesting I didn't need to worry about bank statements since they were handling everything. The new car they bought last year. Emma's expensive private school. Their kitchen renovation. The family vacation to Hawaii. All paid for with my money. The phone rang, making me jump. It was Linda. "Sarah, just checking that you're okay. You left so early this morning." Her voice was sweet as honey, but now I could hear something else underneath it. Something calculating. "I'm fine," I said, surprised that my voice sounded normal. "Just wanted to start going through things here." "Oh, don't tire yourself out. Michael and I can take care of all that. Actually, we were thinking we should start bringing some boxes over this weekend." "Not yet," I said firmly. "I need time to decide what I'm keeping." A pause. "Well, you know there won't be room for much, Sarah. Your new bedroom isn't very large." "I understand that." After we hung up, I sat in Robert's chair, my mind racing. What else had they taken from me besides money? I'd become so isolated over the past 3 years. My old friends rarely called anymore. Had Michael been discouraging them from visiting? My sister Janet lived in Florida now, and our phone calls had become less frequent. Had Michael been telling her I was too tired or unwell to talk? I thought about my daughter Lisa. We'd grown apart after she moved to Washington 15 years ago. The last time she visited 2 years ago, Michael and Linda had planned every moment of her stay. Family dinners that exhausted me, sightseeing trips I was too tired for. When Lisa tried to spend quiet time alone with me, there was always some reason why it wasn't convenient. Lisa had seemed hurt when she left, maybe thinking I didn't want to spend time with her. Had Michael been deliberately driving a wedge between us? As evening fell, I remained in the study, the weight of my discoveries crushing down on me. I'd been so naive, so trusting. I'd let grief make me vulnerable, and my own son had taken advantage of that vulnerability in the worst possible way. This wasn't just theft. It was the systematic destruction of my independence, my relationships, my entire identity as a person capable of making my own decisions. The phone rang again. I answered wearily. "Aunt Sarah? It's Mark." His voice was quiet, almost cautious. "Mark," I said, and my voice cracked slightly. "I've been thinking about you since yesterday. Aunt Sarah, is everything really okay?" For a moment I couldn't speak. The simple kindness in his voice almost broke me. "No," I finally whispered. "Everything is not okay. Not at all." "I thought so. Listen, can we meet somewhere tomorrow? Not at your house. Michael might stop by. There's a little coffee shop called Betty's on Oak Street. 10 o'clock. I agreed, feeling both relief and fear. After hanging up, I locked all the doors and sat in the darkness, wondering how I'd face Michael and Linda now that I knew the truth. The thought of pretending everything was normal made me feel sick. The next morning, Michael called twice before I left. First to ask where I was going, then Linda called to remind me about our appointment with the real estate agent tomorrow. I lied easily, surprising myself. "Just meeting an old friend from church," I said. My voice stayed steady even though my heart was racing. Betty's coffee shop was small and cozy, tucked between a bookstore and a flower shop. Mark was already waiting with a cup of coffee in front of him. When he saw me, he stood up and gave me a gentle hug. "Aunt Sarah," he said, studying my face with concern. "You look like you haven't slept." We sat in a quiet corner booth, and for a moment I couldn't find words. The simple fact that someone cared enough to notice my distress was almost overwhelming. "I think Michael has been stealing from me," I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. Mark's face didn't show surprise, only a deep sadness that told me he'd suspected something was wrong for a long time. "Mom and I have been worried about you for months," he said. "Every time we've tried to visit or call, there's always been some reason why you weren't available." He reached across the table and took my hands. "Aunt Sarah, what Michael and Linda are doing, it's called elder abuse. It's not just wrong, it's criminal." The word abuse hit me like a physical blow. I'd never thought of myself as someone who could be abused. I was a retired nurse, a homeowner, A woman who had raised 2 children successfully. How had I become a victim? I checked my bank accounts yesterday, I said, my voice getting stronger. He's taken over $110,000 in the past 3 years. Mark's grip on my hands tightened. That's theft, pure and simple. And now they want you to sell your house so they can take that money too. We talked for over an hour. Mark gave me the names of a lawyer who specialized in elder abuse and a financial advisor who helped seniors recover from financial exploitation. By the time I left our meeting, I had a plan and something I hadn't felt in years: hope. I made an appointment with the lawyer for the next day and called the bank to put a freeze on any more transfers from my accounts. When I got home, there was a message from Michael on my answering machine. His voice was tight with barely controlled anger. Mom, the bank called me about some problem with your accounts. Call me immediately. I didn't call him back. Instead, I used Mark's phone to call my daughter Lisa. She answered on the second ring. Lisa, it's Mom. There was a moment of silence, then her voice, thick with emotion. Mom? Is that really you? Yes, sweetheart. It's me. Oh my God, Mom. I've been so worried. I've called so many times, but Michael always says you're sleeping or not feeling well. Are you sick? I'm not sick, Lisa. My voice shook. I've been isolated, but I'm starting to understand what's been happening. I told her everything. The financial theft, the pressure to sell my house, the growing isolation from family and friends, and finally Emma's cruelty with the cane that had opened my eyes to how they really saw me. I'm coming home, Lisa said immediately. I can be there tomorrow. No, I said, surprising myself with how firm my voice sounded. Not yet. I need to meet with the lawyer first and understand my options. If you come now, Michael will know something's wrong. Mom, I can't just sit here knowing what's happening to you. Please, Lisa. I need to handle this my way. Give me a few days to get things organized, then come. I promise I'll be okay until then. After our call, I sat in Robert's study thinking about everything that had happened. The anger I'd felt the night before had grown into something harder, more focused. Michael hadn't just stolen my money. He'd stolen years of my life, relationships with my daughter and friends, my confidence in my own judgment. Tomorrow I would meet with the lawyer and start fighting back. But tonight, I sat with Robert's memory and made him a promise. I wouldn't let them destroy me. I would find my way back to the strong woman I used to be, the woman he had loved and respected, the woman who was done being anyone's victim. The next day, I met with Jennifer Walsh, the elder law attorney Mark had recommended. She was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a direct manner that immediately put me at ease. Her office walls were lined with certificates and awards, but what impressed me most was how carefully she listened to my story. What you're describing is textbook elder financial abuse, she said after I'd explained everything. Unfortunately, it's more common than people realize, especially when adult children have gained access to a parent's finances during a vulnerable time. What can I do about it? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. You have several legal options, Jennifer explained. You can file a police report for theft. You can sue in civil court to recover the stolen money. You can get a restraining order. But first, we need to take immediate steps to protect what's left of your assets. By the end of our meeting, Jennifer had helped me draft a letter to my real estate agent, withdrawing my house from the market. She'd also connected me with a financial advisor who specialized in helping seniors regain control of their finances. As I left her office, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, a sense of personal power. That afternoon, I met with the financial advisor, Tom Bradley. He was a patient man who walked me through opening new bank accounts at a completely different bank, one where Michael had no connections. We changed all my passwords and arranged for my Social Security and pension payments to be redirected to the new accounts. The most important thing now is that you don't sign anything without your lawyer present, Tom advised. And don't let Michael or Linda know about these new accounts. When I returned home that evening, I felt like I was seeing my house with new eyes. This was my home, filled with 42 years of memories with Robert. I wasn't giving it up without a fight. The phone was ringing as I walked in. It was Michael and his voice was ice cold. Mom, what the hell is going on? The bank said you've frozen the accounts, and now the realtor says you've pulled the house off the market. We had an agreement. I've changed my mind about selling, I said simply. Changed your mind? He sounded incredulous. Everything was arranged. The contracts were ready to sign. You can't just back out now. I studied my reflection in the hallway mirror as we talked. The woman looking back at me seemed different, somehow more alert, more present. It's my house, Michael. I can change my mind. This isn't like you, Mom. I'm worried about your mental state. Maybe we should have Dr. Peterson take a look at you. There it was, the threat I'd been expecting. If I didn't cooperate, they'd try to have me declared mentally incompetent. I'm perfectly fine, Michael. Just reconsidering my options. Look, if you're having doubts about something, we can discuss it. Whatever's bothering you, we can work it out. Not tonight, I said firmly. I'm tired. We can talk another time. Mom, wait, but I hung up the phone. My hands were shaking, but underneath the fear was a strange sense of triumph. I had stood up to him. I had said no. The next morning brought a series of increasingly frantic calls from Linda, all of which I let go to voicemail. Her messages grew more hostile with each one. Sarah, you're being completely unreasonable. Michael is beside himself with worry. Call us immediately. This behavior is very concerning. If you continue acting irrationally, we might need to have you evaluated. Fine, be stubborn. But don't think this changes our plans. Emma is counting on that college money. The last message confirmed what I'd already suspected. They'd been planning to use the money from my house sale to pay for Emma's education. Money they had no right to promise. I spent the day taking more protective steps. I changed the locks on my house, contacted my insurance company to remove Michael as an authorized contact, and met with my doctor to make sure my medical records clearly stated I was mentally competent. That evening, as I was making dinner, the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Michael standing on my porch, his face dark with anger. I opened the door but kept the security chain in place. Mom, we need to talk. This has gone far enough. I'm not ready to talk tonight, Michael. Not ready. His voice rose. You've lost your mind. First you freeze the bank accounts, then you pull the house off the market, now you've changed the locks? What's next? I looked at this man who was my son, searching for any trace of the little boy I'd raised, the young man I'd been proud of. All I saw now was anger and entitlement. I've realized I made a mistake agreeing to sell the house, I said calmly. I'm not ready to give up my independence. Independence? He laughed bitterly. Mom, you can barely take care of yourself. You need us. Actually, I don't think I do. His expression turned calculating. Someone's been putting ideas in your head. Was it Mark? I saw you having coffee with him. So he'd been watching me. The thought sent a chill down my spine. Good night, Michael, I said, and closed the door despite his continued protests. The next day, Mark called to check on me. How are you holding up? Better than I expected, I said, and realized it was true. Stronger. I'm proud of you, Aunt Sarah. I know this isn't easy. Mark, can you do me a favor? Can you call your mother and ask her to come visit? I'd like to see her. Helen arrived the next day, Robert's sister, who had always been more like my own sister. We'd grown apart since Robert died, and now I understood why. Michael had been managing my social connections just as carefully as he'd managed my finances. Helen took one look at me and wrapped me in a fierce hug. Sarah, what has that boy done to you? We spent hours talking, and Helen's outrage on my behalf was healing in a way I hadn't expected. Robert would be furious, she said, her eyes flashing with the same intensity her brother had shown when he was angry. Using his mother's grief to steal from her. Isolating her from family, it's unforgivable. I'm not sure he sees it that way, I admitted. He seems to genuinely believe he's entitled to my money. Then he needs to face some consequences, Helen said firmly. That evening, Lisa called to say she'd booked a flight and would arrive in 2 days. Are you sure, honey? You have your job, the kids dash. Mom, this is more important. I should have fought harder to stay in touch with you. I won't make that mistake again. 2 days later, I was waiting at the airport when Lisa's flight arrived. When I saw my daughter walking toward me, I started crying. She looked so much like me at her age, and I realized how much time we'd lost. Mom, she said, hugging me tightly. I've missed you so much. On the drive home, we talked about everything that had happened. Lisa asked careful questions, listening without judgment as I explained how gradually, almost invisibly, I'd lost control of my own life. I should have tried harder to reach you, she said, gripping the steering wheel tightly. I knew something felt wrong, but Michael always had explanations. He was very good at managing the situation, I acknowledged. But that's over now. When we arrived at the house, Helen was waiting with dinner prepared. For the first time in 3 years, my home was filled with the voices of people who genuinely loved me. That night, as Lisa and I sat in the living room looking through old photo albums, the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Emma standing on the porch alone, her shoulders slumped. "Do you want me to send her away?" Lisa asked. I shook my head. "No. I want to hear what she has to say." I opened the door, maintaining a safe distance. Emma looked younger somehow, more vulnerable than the cruel young woman who had thrown my cane into traffic. "Grandma," she said quietly, "can I come in?" I hesitated, then stepped aside. Lisa watched warily as Emma followed me to the living room. "I'm sorry," Emma said as soon as we sat down. "About the cane, about everything. I've been horrible to you." Her apology surprised me. "Why now, Emma?" She stared at her hands. "After Dad and Dr. Peterson came here the other day, they had a huge fight. Dad was screaming about lawyers and frozen accounts, and Dr. Peterson said he wouldn't help try to declare someone incompetent when they obviously weren't." Emma swallowed hard. "Then Dad started ranting about how everything was falling apart, how they needed your money for my college because they'd spent all their savings on house renovations and Mom's shopping." Lisa made a disgusted sound. Emma looked at her, then back at me. "I didn't know, Grandma. I swear I didn't know they were stealing from you. Dad always said you wanted to help, that you insisted on paying for things because you had so much money from Grandpa's insurance. And you believed that?" Lisa asked skeptically. "Why wouldn't I?" Emma's voice cracked. "They're my parents. I trusted them." I studied my granddaughter's face, looking for signs of deception. All I saw was confusion and genuine shame. "What do you want from me now, Emma?" I asked quietly. "Nothing," she said quickly. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness or help with college. I just needed you to know I'm sorry, and that I didn't understand what was really happening." After Emma left, Lisa and I sat in silence for a while. "Do you believe her?" she finally asked. "I want to," I admitted. "She's young, and she was raised by Michael and Linda. She might not have understood the full scope of what they were doing." "Maybe," Lisa said. "Just be careful, Mom. This family has hurt you enough." Over the next few days, with Lisa and Helen's support, I made my final decisions about how to handle the situation. I wouldn't pursue criminal charges against Michael. The thought of my son in jail was still too painful. But I would file a civil lawsuit to recover the stolen money. Jennifer assured me we had a strong case. The bank records are clear evidence of unauthorized transfers. Combined with your testimony about the manipulation and isolation, we can recover most of what was taken. Within a week, we'd filed the lawsuit. Michael's response came through his lawyer. A denial of wrongdoing and threats of a countersuit for defamation. "He's bluffing," Jennifer told me. "The evidence is overwhelming. He knows it." But I wasn't backing down. With my daughter, sister-in-law, and nephews surrounding me with support, I felt stronger than I had in years. I was done being anyone's victim. The woman who had been too grief-stricken and confused to protect herself was gone. In her place was someone who understood her own worth and was willing to fight for it. The lawsuit moved faster than I expected. Faced with bank records showing over $110,000 in unauthorized transfers and Jennifer's threat to involve criminal prosecutors, Michael's lawyer advised him to settle. 3 months after I'd first discovered the theft, we reached an agreement. Michael would return $95,000 of the stolen money and sign a legal document agreeing to have no contact with me unless I initiated it. The day we signed the settlement papers, I felt a mixture of relief and sadness. This was my son, the baby I'd carried and raised, and now we were sitting across from each other in a lawyer's office like strangers. Michael wouldn't look at me during the entire proceeding. When it was over, he walked out without saying a word. Linda never contacted me again. It was as if I'd simply stopped existing for her once the money was no longer available. In a way, her complete disappearance was almost a relief. At least I knew exactly where I stood. Emma was different. A few weeks after the settlement, she sent me a carefully written letter apologizing again and explaining that she was applying for scholarships and part-time jobs to pay for college herself. She asked if she could call me sometimes, not for money but just to talk. I wrote back saying yes, but that rebuilding trust would take time. Our conversation started slowly, brief phone calls where she told me about her job at a local restaurant and her college applications. I listened carefully, looking for signs of manipulation, but gradually I began to believe her remorse was genuine. She was young and had been raised by parents who taught her that taking advantage of others was acceptable. Maybe there was still hope for her to learn better values. Lisa decided to sell her house in Washington and move back home. "I want to be closer to you, Mom," she said. "I've missed too much time already." She found a job at the local hospital and bought a small house just 10 minutes from mine. Having her nearby felt like getting back a piece of myself I thought was lost forever. Helen sold her apartment and moved into the small guest house behind my property. "I'm getting older too," she said when I protested that she didn't need to look after me. "Maybe we can look after each other." It was perfect. I had company when I wanted it and privacy when I needed it. My house remained mine, filled with Robert's books and 42 years of memories. I converted the spare bedroom into an art studio and enrolled in painting classes at the community center. It was something I'd always wanted to try but never found time for during my nursing career and busy family life. The first painting I completed was of Robert's reading corner, his favorite chair, the lamp he'd read by every evening, the stack of books that still sat on the side table. When I showed it to Lisa, she cried, "It's perfect, Mom. It looks exactly like I remember it." I joined a book club at the library and reconnected with old friends I'd lost touch with. Many of them had wondered why I'd become so isolated after Robert died. When I explained what had happened, several shared their own stories of family members who'd taken advantage of elderly relatives. I wasn't alone in what I'd experienced, and somehow that made it easier to bear. One sunny afternoon, as I was painting in my studio, Lisa brought me an envelope that had arrived in the mail. Inside was a letter from the University of California's Financial Aid Office. They were notifying me about a new scholarship program that had been established in my name, the Sarah Martinez Resilience Scholarship, designed to help students who were caring for elderly family members while pursuing their education. The letter explained that an anonymous donor had funded 5 full scholarships with a note saying the program was meant to honor the importance of treating our elders with dignity and respect. I knew immediately who was behind it. When I called Lisa that evening, she confirmed my suspicion. "I wanted something good to come from all this," she explained. "I used part of my inheritance from Dad, the money Michael never had access to create the scholarship in your name." I sat in my kitchen that night, reading the scholarship letter again and again. My name would be on something that would help young people for years to come, something that honored the values Robert and I had tried to live by. 6 months after the settlement, I received an unexpected visit from Dr. Peterson. He came to apologize for his role in Michael's attempt to have me declared incompetent. "I should have recognized what was happening," he said, looking genuinely ashamed. "I've known you for 20 years, Sarah. I should have realized you weren't showing signs of dementia or incompetence. You were showing signs of someone fighting back against abuse." His apology meant more than I'd expected. Dr. Peterson had delivered both my children, had cared for Robert during his final illness, had been part of our family's life for decades. Having him acknowledge what had really happened felt like another piece of validation. As summer turned to fall, I found myself busier than I'd been in years. Besides my painting classes and book club, I'd started volunteering at the senior center, helping other elderly people navigate financial and legal issues. Jennifer had connected me with several organizations that work to prevent elder abuse, and I found purpose in sharing my story to help others recognize the warning signs. One evening, as I was working in my garden, Mark stopped by with his wife and their 2 young children. The kids ran around the yard while we sat on the porch talking. "You look so much better, Aunt Sarah," he said. "When I saw you at that family gathering last year, I was really worried. You seemed so small and defeated." "I felt small," I admitted. "But I'm not that person anymore." His wife squeezed my hand. "You're an inspiration. Mark told me everything that happened. I can't imagine having the strength to fight back like you did." You'd be surprised what you can do when you have to, I said. And when you have the right people supporting you. As winter approached, I made a decision that surprised even me. I decided to host Christmas dinner for the first time since Robert died. Lisa was thrilled. Helen immediately started planning the menu, and Mark's family said they'd love to come. The house filled with laughter and conversation in a way it hadn't for years. Lisa's teenage children, who I barely knew because of the forced separation, spent hours looking through photo albums and asking me to tell them stories about their grandfather. Emma called on Christmas morning. Our relationship was still cautious, but she'd been consistent in staying in touch without asking for anything. She'd gotten a partial scholarship to a state university and was working 2 jobs to pay for the rest. I wanted to thank you, Grandma, she said. Not just for forgiving me, but for showing me what real strength looks like. I'm trying to be a better person. We all make mistakes, Emma, I told her. What matters is learning from them. As the new year began, I started working on a memoir about my experience. Jennifer had suggested it might help other families recognize and prevent elder abuse. Writing about everything that had happened was difficult, but it also felt healing. I was taking control of my own story. One February morning, I woke up to find fresh snow covering the garden Robert and I had planted together. I made coffee and sat by the kitchen window, watching cardinals at the bird feeder we'd hung there 15 years ago. The pain of Michael's betrayal would never completely go away. There were still moments when I grieved for the relationship we'd lost, when I wondered if I could have handled things differently. But those moments were becoming less frequent and less devastating. I picked up the framed photo on the kitchen table, Robert and me on our 40th wedding anniversary, both of us laughing at something our photographer had said. His arm was around my waist and we looked so happy, so secure in our love and our life together. I made it through, Robert, I whispered to his picture. I found my way back. 2 years after Emma had thrown my cane into that busy street, my life looked completely different. The money Michael had stolen was mostly recovered and safely managed by Tom Bradley. My house remained mine, filled with art supplies and visiting family, and the comfortable clutter of a life being fully lived. Most importantly, I had reclaimed myself. The woman who had been too grief-stricken and confused to protect herself was gone, replaced by someone who understood her own worth and wouldn't compromise it for anyone. I wasn't bitter, though that might have been easier. Instead, I was grateful for the people who had helped me find my strength, grateful for the years I had left to live on my own terms, grateful for the hard-won wisdom that had come from surviving betrayal and discovering I was stronger than I'd ever known. As I sat in that sunny kitchen, surrounded by evidence of a life rebuilt, I felt something I hadn't experienced since before Robert died. Genuine contentment. Not the fragile happiness that depends on everything going right, but the deep satisfaction that comes from knowing you can handle whatever comes next. The woman who had once stood trembling on a sidewalk, watching her cane in traffic while her family laughed, was gone forever. In her place was someone who would never again let anyone decide her worth or her future. And that, I thought as I refilled my coffee cup and picked up my paintbrush, was exactly the way it should be.